Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, my friend Jeff and I discuss Blondie's 1981 smash hit album, AutoAmerican. Great discussion, great album. Stay tuned, coming up right now.
Yeah, all
All
right.
right, well, let's get right into it. So, AutoAmerican by Blondie.
Yeah. Yeah, what were your first thoughts, impressions? You said you'd never listened to the whole album start to finish before, which I hadn't either.
I haven't, no, actually, I have a copy of the album right
Oh,
here.
wow.
I don't know if you can see that, but yeah.
Yeah, New York, right?
Yeah, it's first of all, it's a very kind of, this kind of, it's a very Blondie-ish kind of sets the tone for the album. It's you know, um, New York and some kind of, I don't know if it's like graffiti or just art, some kind of artwork, modern artwork. But it seems like they wanted to feature it's kind of like, very abstract. It's on the back too. They're gone, and then still some kind of the same kind of like artwork. And I'm not sure what that's about, but it seems to be very 80s to me. And then the inner jacket has the same kind of just graffiti-ish kind of I don't know, mosaic artwork. I don't know what you call it, but a little disappointed there was no lyrics with mine. No, like I like detail on the album,
Yeah.
but it's just got some credits here on the back along with this again this artwork. So
Who
um,
does it list as the producer of the album? Is it Chris Stein?
um, produced by Mike Chapman,
Mike Chapman?
engineered by Lenise Bent. Yeah, I don't know who Mike Chapman is.
Yeah, same.
Recorded in Hollywood at United Western Studio.
Oh, wow, so it wasn't recorded in New York.
Nope.
Because they're all kind of from New York,
I know they're
right?
very, yeah, actually, I think I read about this, that the record company asked them to record it there. Usually they recorded it in New York, but they were happy to get some free time in Los Angeles and spend a couple months recording the album there.
All
But
right.
they're definitely very much a New York band, right out of, came out of the punk new wave scene, I
Yeah.
believe. CBGB's, one of those, very New York bands. So I don't know, my quick overall impression is it's very, very cool, very of the times. 1981, I think, right? This is released. 81. Um, you can tell what's cool about it. They're stretching themselves, and there's all kinds of different sounds on the record. Uh, there's like some old time, I don't know, 20s, 30s kind of music.
Yeah.
There's some futuristic intros. Obviously, there's a rap song or a half rap song, a funk rap song, which happens to go to #1,
Hmm.
which is unbelievable. The Tide is High, which is a reggae song. I think it's a cover. But a very eclectic, interesting mix of transitioning from. I mean, it's not a super 80s record because it's so early in the 80s. It doesn't have that 80s feel to it. I felt it still have some of this leftover energy from, again, the punk and new wave stuff going on, and they're bringing all kinds of influences, all kinds of music, putting it together in this one album. So it's interesting. In 1980, 81 is an interesting time. There's really no classic sound. I think there's at least a disco song or two on the album. So it's the end of disco. Disco is, I was kind of actually surprised to hear disco music because I thought, well, 80, 81, that's over by then, but it really wasn't. It was, MTV had not started quite yet when this was being recorded. So Um, it's an interesting time capsule. I guess I'll stop there and see what your first thoughts of it are.
I appreciate what you're saying actually, and I I chose not to look up anything about the album before listening to it.
Yeah,
Like you, I had never listened to that album start to finish. I was familiar with Rapture because heavy rotation on MTV. And also when you saw Blondie on MTV, for me, I was like blown away. Who
yeah,
is this woman? Like she was
yeah.
stunning. She looked completely unique in a way, but very familiar at the same time.
Right, fetching, but yeah, but
Yeah,
familiar. Yeah,
yeah. And here was this rap, which we were calling rap then, right? It was, the rap had evolved quite a bit from there, but it was the first time it really had hit mainstream and suburban kids like me, you know.
I was blown. I mean, I hadn't heard nothing like that song. It was incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
Came
And
out of
so,
Mars, you know.
um, yeah, so Rapture was my entry into it, and then I didn't even know the Tide is High was on that same album until now. I knew it was another hit. I knew that was a single. I knew it was played all the time. You know, both Rapture and the Tide is High, I feel like I've heard in every decade.
Yes,
Like whether it's a wedding or if you're going to a dance club, or whatever, you're gonna hear those two songs
yeah.
um, to this day, which is pretty amazing because I think you're right that the Tide is High is a cover,
I
and
didn't know that, but yeah, it is. I looked it up.
so starting this, just knowing that Rapture was on there, and that's about it. I was surprised by that first song, Europa or whatever,
Yeah.
that sort of instrumental,
Hmm.
almost uh, like string oriented, very cinematic, kind of intro. And I'm like, wow, like this is. I remember thinking like this is actually really cool. It's kind of like James Bondy in a way, and
Yes.
again, like you said, I had to really remember this is like 1980, 81,
Hmm.
because if I didn't remind myself of that, it could get cheesy quickly.
It could. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing actually. I'm like, well, they're kind of trying too hard. It's kind of obvious, all these different genres and different types of music, but this really hadn't been done before like this. So they're, like to me, they're really going for it, right? It's really they're just like the energy. They're excited about all these different types of music, and yeah. So maybe there's some misses on there, but like you just said, there's two gigantic hits.
Yeah,
I think they both hit number one, and like you said, they're both ubiquitous now. They're played
yeah,
all the time. Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, just to piggyback what you said, there might be some misses on there, but they weren't afraid to take swings,
right,
big swings.
right. I mean,
Uh,
what's wrong with that, right?
yeah, because I had no idea this was going to be a twisting, turning, eclectic romp that it ended up being. I mean, you had the rap, you had reggae, you had, like you said, like torch songs, you had 20s, 30s inspired, like
Right.
nightclub
Yeah,
songs.
nightclub or ragtime, or I don't know what the genre is or something, but it's
Yeah.
sure not
And
ragtime, but yeah, 20s kind of music. Yeah.
I think after my first listening, I'm like, what was that? Like, I didn't understand, like, I didn't, had no idea what I had just heard. Like,
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a lot more punk, you know?
Yeah. I
Um,
did too.
and I felt there was some really good driving punkish songs. I think actually the first song after that instrumental that starts it, that was really cool.
Hmm.
Um, If I
Yeah,
look
that's
at
what is
if I look at the tracks
Live It
here,
Up.
I thought "Live It Up" was really good.
Yeah.
Here's looking at you. Kind of, it takes a turn, and it's a really unexpected turn. And so I wasn't ready for that. And then the tide is high. If you weren't, if you're never heard that song before, you went from instrumental, almost classical cinematic music to
Right.
kind of a hard driving punk to kind of like a bit of a torch song to reggae, and then Angels on the Balcony, which actually I really like Angels on the Balcony too.
That's my favorite underrated song on the album, Angels on the
I thought that
Balcony.
song was great.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then by the time you get to Susie and Jeffrey, I was scratching my head. I felt that one was a miss.
Yeah, which is it? Is it called Susie and Jeffrey? Where is that? What's that one?
Well, I have it through iTunes,
Okay.
so I don't know if I have like some sort of. What's your last song? Follow Me?
Follow Me.
Yeah, and that's like a cover, I think, of a
It
really
might
old
be.
song. Or no, that was from Camelot. I
I
think
don't know.
I looked it up that was from the
Written
music
by
of Camelot.
Okay, written by Lerner and Lowe. So yeah, that's not part of Blondie. So I don't know who. Yeah, it kind of fades out a little bit. T-Birds is it sounds like a typical Blondie song. Not great, but
One of the things I noticed, like with T-Birds and Walk Like Me, and even Faces in a way, um, again, reminding myself that 1980, 81 was a transitional period, right? Like you were
mhm.
saying, disco was dying, punk was emerging. You also had new wave emerging.
New
Or
Wave
punk was
definitely.
really
Yep.
not emerging. It was still
Punk is being
like,
transformed basically, right? Punk is kind
yeah,
of it's almost done,
yeah,
sort of.
yeah. And a lot of the people that were, yeah, my bad. A lot of the people that were younger who grew up on punk now were, you know, creating new wave.
Right.
Ironically, because new wave had a lot of synth,
Yes. Yeah.
and that was their twist on it, I suppose. But I thought one of the things this album was lacking, at least with the test of time, with some of these deeper cuts, was lyrically was not that interesting. Like
Mm.
T-Birds,
Yeah.
it struggled to hook me in. The music
Yeah.
was good, but I wasn't excited about the song.
Yeah. I agree. It's if you look at it now, 40 years later, it's a little uneven, and it's like I skip kind of a situation. But I don't, man, I still love The Tide is High and Rapture. I could keep listening to it for the next 40 years. I don't know. I don't get sick of those songs for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah.
Um,
And her voice is, I think,
her
fantastic,
voice is fantastic.
especially in "The Tide Is High." When she says, "I'm not the kind of girl,"
Yeah, she does go kind of up and down, have some different
Yeah,
vocal treatments there. But yeah, in Rapture, you can't underestimate. That's so ahead of its time. I mean, yeah, there was some hip hop stuff going on and some rapping going on in maybe the late 70s, but to take that and put it into a mainstream record and then it went number one. I don't think we saw another rap song on the charts until 1983.
you could be right.
I mean, I don't know officially, but I know just personally, and I was like 11 when this came out. I remember again, Rapture was like from a different planet. It was so weird and cool.
Yeah,
And then I remember when I got to high school, 3 years later, I remember a girl in my English class talking about Run DMC. And I'm like, well, what's that? I had to look it up what they were like. Oh, this is this, rap. So they're, to me, they're like 3 years ahead of the curve with that song
yeah.
because nothing. nothing mainstream that I was a pretty mainstream kid. I didn't hear anything like that for another 3 years.
Well, you did have the Sugar Hill Gang in there.
You did, yeah. Rapper's Delight. I
Yeah.
guess they're. I don't know how much I heard of that song. I mean, I can't remember now. It's so popular now, but um, that might be an exception. So maybe I don't think they got real popular, that song,
No,
like
I mean,
on the Billboard chart.
I think one of the problems with Rapper's Delight was like it was like an 8 minute song.
Right.
It was really long. And then I think the other big problem was I don't think they had any permission to use the sample they used.
Yeah, it was chic good times, I think,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. It was a blatant ripoff.
yeah.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. The fact that I don't know what the inspiration was. If it was just living in New York and being in that scene of what New York used to be. Like you mentioned CBGB's before, like CBGB's is gone,
Right.
and like that was like an institution that it seemed like a privilege for bands to play, even though it was small.
Right.
Like once you hit CBGB's, you kind of made it.
Yeah,
And New
I
York
think
was an art scene, and it doesn't have that anymore.
right. Yeah, Studio 54, the
Yeah.
disco club, all that kind of energy going on there.
But wasn't Blondie kind of the fixture? I mean, I feel like she was friends with Andy Warhol, and
I think so, yeah. They were very trendy, avant-garde for
well,
sure.
clearly, like I said, I had no expectation that this album was going to be as eclectic and avant-garde as it was.
Yeah, so I guess to sum it up for me, it's like right, a little uneven, but a great effort and great encapsulation of the times, and you can appreciate the time period, but even more so, it still stands on these two unbelievable tracks.
Yeah.
Um, make it that alone make it worth putting up in anybody's whatever top 500 list of all-time albums or something.
Yeah.
I think it's a must-have for your collection.
Yeah. I would say that I agree that Rapture and The Tide is High were, uh, transcendent songs that, like you said, 4 decades later are still relevant, and they're most likely going to be still relevant for some time. Um, I think I really appreciate how eclectic it was.
Mm.
When I think about artists, maybe Bjork is not the best example, but that's one of the first ones that comes to mind of like people who maybe heard that album when they were kids
Right.
and realized that the world was much wider
Mm-hmm.
than what like the boxes of rock or punk or even disco put you in, that you could kind of stretch these things out a bit and have if you think about it, they're two hits. They're a white band from New York. One is capitalizing on rap and the other one's capitalizing on reggae, and both of
Right.
them, like you said, went to number one. It showed the appetite for Americans at how much they wanted black music,
Yeah.
whether they knew it or not. Like
Not just
rap,
black, but a variety of music, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I don't know. While some of the songs I agree were misses, I appreciated the effort, and I feel like it has to be a heavily influential album to how rock changed.
That's a great point. Yeah, that its import is also based on how influential it was, and I'm sure it was very influential.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because a lot of kids at that time bought that album for Rapture and then for Tide is High, and probably had no idea what was in store for them.
right. And you mentioned Bjork, female singer, but it was also important not just on those two songs and the variety of music on there, but this beautiful woman lead singer of a rock band, new wave band.
Yeah,
That was something different too. There had been girl groups and girl solo artists, I guess Carole King, Janis Joplin, and those kind of people. But I'm sure I'm missing somebody. But this is a little different kind of a band, I
yeah.
think.
I think that's a great point. I think it's a really great point that yeah, she was one of the people to break the mold of, and I'm gonna shut my door before the sirens come.
Yeah,
Um,
coming to get you.
yeah, she really broke that mold of outside of Carole King and Janis Joplin, right? Like Janis Joplin was an activist. Carole King sang beautiful. She was an activist in many ways too, but singer songwriters.
Singer songwriter type of music. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now you had a really strong front woman,
Mm-hmm.
and who was beautiful with a beautiful voice, but then had this eclectic range. Whereas like Joan Jett was like a rocker, right? Like Joan
Right.
Jett stayed in one spot,
Mm-hmm.
and Blondie is the first band I've ever seen with a female lead singer running a gamut of genres.
Right. Yep. Writing their own songs for the most part.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then did you notice the drumming? Like on some of
Not
those heavier songs, like that drummer was kind of
not
insane. Like he was
not as
good.
particular. Yeah, I've heard he's good. I know people like him.
Clem
Yeah,
Burke.
Clem Burke. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think he's well regarded.
Yeah,
Uh,
I like
I'm sure if people ever see this in the future and it gets popular, like, what are you talking about? Of course, Clem Burke.
yeah.
It's,
I on that first song, Live It Up, he kind of cuts loose and I'm like,
mm,
damn. I remember one of the things I thought of while listening to this album of how cool it would have been around 80, 81 to go to a club, a small club that they were playing at late at night in New York, maybe midnight, and have them run through this whole thing.
right.
What a trip that would have been,
I mean, great.
because no one had really heard anything like it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be great to get a time machine and go back and spend a night
Yeah,
there at these clubs. And it's Blondie, and then it's the Talking Heads for an hour.
yeah,
Some, yeah.
yeah. I imagine that was quite a scene.
Yep.
Quite a scene. Yeah. So, do you have outside of the two hits, Rapture and The Tide Is High? Do you have a favorite song?
I mentioned that the Angels on the Balcony
Oh
was
yeah,
was
yeah.
my favorite. Yeah, I think we kind of talked about it. The other ones are, I mean, I don't remember the names of some of the ones. They're okay, but um, that one stood out as I kept listening to it on repeat. I was like, oh, what's this song again? I go look at it. Angels on the Balcony. So
Yeah, I really like that
yeah,
one too. I would say that one, and like I said, Live It Up. And like I said, I really
Live It
appreciated,
Up. Yeah.
yeah.
Is
And
that
I,
is that kind of disco-y? Live It Up,
uh,
or was that a different one I'm thinking of?
Live It Up is kind of rocky.
Okay.
It's got a rock feel to it.
I
And I
guess
appreciated that weird opening,
I
you know? I don't know.
didn't.
I
I
liked
didn't
it.
really care for that one, but yeah, that's good. I'm glad you did.
I felt like again, I think part of it was not knowing what I was getting myself into,
Right.
and uh, it, like I said, it felt very cinematic. Like
Hmm.
that could be like a movie is just starting,
Right.
you know, and like I kind of pictured the credits are rolling on this album, and like we're about to go for a ride, and it was a ride.
Oh, they'd probably be happy to hear that. It's probably the effect they were going for, I would
Yeah,
think.
yeah, and the misses were epic. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know why that track needed to make it on there. I think the misses for me was "Do the Dark," and I gotta say T-Birds was not
Yeah, I
too
just
good for me.
I can't recall "Do the Dark." If I heard it, I just remember T-Birds. I'm like, oh, this one again. And it wasn't really cutting it for me. So,
Yeah,
but I don't need to think about those. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, it's a
yeah.
good album. Good
It was a
call.
good album. Yeah.
Yeah, what made you think of it, or what made you choose it?
I don't know. It for some once in a while I'm just kind of paging through my collection of albums, and I was just looking for something like just for something for the day. Sometimes I'll just pick something for the day and listen to it, and I just happened to see this. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'll just listen to this today. And then there was like this. I started listening to it, maybe half of it, or maybe I don't know if I got through the whole thing. And then I kind of had the idea. I thought this is just kind of a random album to pick. I'm like, this would be a good idea to do these videos. I'm like, why don't we just devote a day or a couple of days to this album and just keep re-listening to it.
Yeah,
And I don't know, it just kind of caught my eye for whatever reason.
right on.
No,
Yeah,
no
it
reason.
was a great choice. You know, what I really like about it is I don't think I would have listened to this album start to finish had you not suggested it.
And that's the idea. Yeah, that's why I wanted to do it. Um,
Yeah, and it's again, I appreciate your nod to remembering the times, right? Like
yeah,
um 80 81 was a strange time.
it was. Yeah, now that I'm just talking out loud about it, it really is a strange time. It's not, can't really define it.
No. And then things started to coalesce, and like kind of the sound of the early 80s emerged,
Yeah,
you
I feel
know.
like that's true. Yep.
Yeah, and you had the the sort of punk songs get a little bit more polish on them, and then
Right.
you add some of the synth, and you'd have a little bit different texture, and bands maybe started slowing it down and creating some space, and then you have, you know, the Thompson Twins, and you
Hmm.
have, you know, all these different bands that created that 82, 83, 84, 85 sound,
Right. Yes.
and then it fell off a cliff.
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah. I don't know what the late '80s. I don't know what that's about. It's a
Yeah.
weird.
No, it had the early 80s showed such promise for music, and then what a weird turn.
Yeah, you start getting to things like I don't know what was the late '80s. Was that like Backstreet Boys and some of that stuff coming
Yeah.
out, and
Paula
you know,
Abdul,
Paul
and
Abdul, Pebbles, and
yeah. Although I did
yeah,
like Buffalo Stance by Nina Cherry.
I like that song too. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah,
And but yeah, you had some really weird.
Janet Jackson, "Color Me Bad."
Yep.
Uh,
Yep, exactly. Yes,
yeah,
so you had then, but then you had Guns N' Roses emerge.
yeah. Then there's different things. Yeah, Guns N' Roses was the only thing that to me they're punk.
Yeah.
They're like that's a punk album. It's like it was or maybe a precursor to grunge. I don't know. It was anti hair band, even though they had a lot of hair, but it was the attitude was different. They were grungy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. GNR was definitely about all you had. late 80s to get out of whatever was happening with highly produced, you know, maybe even manufactured artists.
A lot of manufactured songs.
Yeah.
The pop scene was terrible. For the most part, I wasn't. I mean, there was hair bands, and it was crossing of these like bad pop songs, hair metal bands, and hip hop exploding, like West Coast gangster rap and Guns N' Roses, which kind of fit in with the gangster rap a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and then bringing it back to Blondie, like here in 1976 or whatever they started. And then you mentioned the Talking Heads. Like you had some, you know, artists that were interested in the music, but what the image was outside of it and what they were representing. And,
yes,
you know, it felt so shallow by the time you reached the late 80s.
it did. Yeah, yeah. Grunge was needed by that time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well,
All right.
yeah. So there
Uh,
it is. AutoAmerican. Do you think that was like, do you know anything about the title and like that little thing that she reads about in that opening
oh
Europa?
yeah, yeah. I didn't think too hard about it. I heard her talking about it. It didn't seem to fit. The whole album was so diverse. I didn't really get it. Um, I guess it's obviously things are happening. It's other times, like late '70s, early '80s. This is, the '70s are over. The hippie stuff and singer songwriters now. It's like computers and manufacturing. Automated processes and technology, synthesizers, computers. That's what I think is happening. And there's this, the new decade, the '80s, and there's probably just this. To me, that's what the attitude is.
Yeah.
I read, I did read a little bit about it. They said they wanted to call it Coca-Cola.
Really?
They got to make it like just an all American kind of a
Huh.
name, but I think Coke wasn't having it.
Wow. I, I wonder if they regret that.
Yeah, it would have been a better name, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, the album, you know,
Oh,
not every
Coke,
track,
Coke
but
Ritter. Yeah. Mhm.
there are tracks that still hold up. What's Blondie doing now? Are they still touring at all, or
I think as of a few years ago, they were.
yeah?
Hmm.
I mean, I imagine people still want to see them live.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Watch the Open with T-Birds.
That was rough. Yeah.
Yeah, not the lyrics were not strong on that.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for watching all the way through. If there are other albums or songs you'd like to see us discuss, please let us know in the comments below and we'll take a look at it. Again, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.